This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Hing.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio. Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. Joan and Janet are subtle energy empaths who navigate consciousness. Their passion is to support you in your evolution. As consciousness, we are all one. One mind, one heart, free of all limitations. Experience this reality with us and discover how it can make a difference in your daily living. Join us in a state of grace as we explore, with warmth and humor, this thing we call life. Now, here are Joan Newcomb and Janet Barrett.
Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. We're your co-hosts, Joan Newcomb, coming to you from Tacoma, Washington, and my partner, Janet Barrett, is coming to you from Portland, Oregon.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
We have a great show for you today. We are going to be talking about the Women's March and consciousness.
Yeah, it's marching along, isn't it?
Yes. In an interesting way. So last Saturday, January 21st, was the International Women's March, and it happened all around the world. So I guess it could be marches, but there was a very unifying thing going on. And it initiated a shift in the collective consciousness and ushered in a new era of the divine feminine. It was a perfect example of the 100th monkey syndrome. I guess it's not a syndrome, it's a phenomenon. I keep saying syndrome. We're all turning into monkeys. Some people are. Affecting everyone's awareness, and whether they know it or not, they have been transformed. So what does this mean for you? And tune in, stay tuned. We have a lot to say about this. What about you?
And that's what we're going to do today. So listeners, if you want to join in, the number you can reach us at is 1-844-390-8255. That's 1-844-390-8255. And we know that when we go into heart space, it's challenging to do that and then call. So if you want to call, please join us in the first 10 minutes. Is always a good place to do it. And we're going to have people go deeper with us in other areas, aren't we, Joan?
Yes. This is a way to go deeper with us beyond the show. You can connect with us beyond the show by going to our website, www.consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. And there you can listen to the podcast. I went too deep there for a moment. Yeah. You can listen to all our previous podcasts, and you can also access our websites or individual websites. You can read our blogs. Janet posts hers on Mondays, and I post mine usually on Fridays when I remember to. And you can also find out about our meetups. Janet does hers in Portland on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I do mine at various times. I have one tomorrow in University Place. I have one actually on Mercer Island on Sunday. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a bit. And I do them in Seattle, Bellevue, and Tacoma as well. Those are meetups, and then we have individual sessions that we're available for. You can access us through there. You can also find us on Facebook. The show is on Facebook, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and you can join the group there and join the fun. You can join Janet directly on Facebook as Janet Barrett on Facebook, and I'm Joan Newcomb on Facebook. You can also follow the show on Twitter. It's at Joan and Janet is the Twitter handle for us. And my Twitter handle is Joan M. Newcomb. I have a wide variety of things that I tweet about. And finally, here, last but not least, is the YouTube. You can find us on YouTube, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. All our archived shows there are on YouTube, if that's your preferred mode. And I put out a new show once a week, a new Mystic Minute is what it is, once a week on YouTube, and you can find it there under Joan M. Newcomb.
Lots of ways in this day and age of being connected, and that's really kind of what that feminine energy that we're noticing is. A lot of cooperation, a lot of support, and a lot of community showing up. So you are part of our community, so let us help you. We're happy to do so. So Join us in. And if you want to call in, that number is 1-844-390-8255. 1-844-390-8255.
Yes, and if you want to get a word in edgewise, start dialing it now.
Yeah, really.
Or else the boat has sailed.
Yeah.
So real quick, I did mention that I am doing I'm doing a meetup, a Conscious Conversations meetup in University Place tomorrow night. It's at 6:15, and it's at the University Place Library, which is south of Tacoma next to the Whole Foods. I am also doing a special talk on Mercer Island this Sunday, the 29th of January. It's a special talk. 2017 is the year of realization, and what are you going to manifest? So we have been going through this tremendous collective evolution, and it's really come to a peak, and you can take advantage of it. You can go with the flow, or you can sit in resistance, whichever you prefer. So if you want to go with the flow, come to Mercer Island, and I'll tell you all about it.
Well, and the key for everyone is to understand that this doesn't have to be difficult, right? Unfortunately, our stories and our patterns incorporate a lot of drama, and sometimes the comedy of life in being who we are. And what really is showing up is how easy it is if you just allow. It's not so much about surrender, and it's not so much about giving up and all that language. It's just about allowing. It's unfolding what is within each of us to express itself in new ways. And that's so exciting. So go listen with Joan and come to groups and do those things where we encourage you to appreciate that there's nothing to resist in ourselves. It is only about unfolding and opening up your awareness. That's all there is. You'd be surprised what you find in there sometimes.
Yes.
So our topic, Joan.
Our topic today, it's the rise of the divine feminine, though I've actually always stumbled over the term divine feminine. It for me feels like it has an archaic description to something that's happening that really is brand new. And like you said, it doesn't have to be difficult. And that is what I am noticing as we are going forward, is that there's an expansion that is very effortless. So if you can imagine giving birth effortlessly.
Yeah.
There's a Monty Python, is it Life of Brian? There's a scene in a Monty Python movie where one of the men dressed up as a woman is washing dishes, and suddenly a baby drops out from underneath her skirt. And it's the Every Sperm is Sacred song. And that's how effortless your birth can be. You don't even have to push.
I would think in the old what's the word? Like Aborigines, old third world country. I'm sorry, I have no words this morning for this. It was like you squat, you drop, and you go on, right? We've developed in this culture the sacredness of the birth and all this kind of stuff. And I have a feeling, that has collected all that energy. So it's just really, if it's just a day-to-day experience, then you're...
Well, if we're going to birth stories, I would say that they desacredized it. They made it into a medical procedure where it had to be like an emergency, because the core, Western medicine's core was at the Civil War, and they're, amputate and cauterize the wound. Yeah. So that takes away from the naturalness of birth, where yes, they did, they dropped the baby at the side of and they packed the kid up and got back on the horse and
I guess that all that tangent is really just about let's see, we don't mean that to be distracting. It's all part of the
we don't
story.
Want to distract from what the actual what this is about, which is a spiritual birth. And a spiritual birth is a coming into form of the highest vibration of the essence of who you are. And it's it seems feminine if you personify the masculine as something that is dominant.
Right.
And I would not say that's divine masculine. So that's why I can't say it's divine feminine, but it is an expansion of the essence.
We definitely want to bring forward that this may have been under the umbrella of a women's march, but those marchers were full of men and children and those who value the nature of a woman.
Oh, I knew you wanted to weave that in there.
Yes.
So the thing is, it was full of women and it was full of people who didn't identify with one gender or another. So it really transcends gender as well, because
right, because that gender issue is getting softer. And I think that's what's showing up in our cultures and in our appreciation. And you know, we have these biases. We don't even know we have biases. But, you know, establishing man, establishing woman is an immediate bias. And it's an immediate separateness. And within each individual human, there is the male and female. And it's not about being in opposition or in war. It's about an integration. It's about how they work together. And I think this is what's showing up. So we can call it a women's march, and we can call it this and we call that. I think it's really just us realigning within those forces at play that we have labeled something and have created separateness in it. And so I know many women who embrace a male energy well. I know many men who embrace a feminine energy well. I know many people that are confused or showing up differently, or that those issues are at play in them, expressing themselves. And it's, if you take all the judgment out and just look at the energy and the potential that is there, you get free of these labels and you go, okay, something new is showing up. That's the exciting part. That's the exciting part.
So we have a lot we're going to be talking about, and we have to stop here for a quick commercial break. So you are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and stay tuned because we are talking about the rise of the divine feminine, the Women's March and consciousness, right after these messages.
Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs. Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath, accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet, and we are talking about the Women's March and consciousness.
Yeah, I think we should go to heart, Joan, because I think this is something that we need to get much bigger than our limited viewpoints.
Absolutely. Let's
Yeah. All right, everybody. So wherever you are, whatever time and space, because there is no time and space in consciousness, just relax, take a breath, a part of you that can pay attention, let it pay attention. And let's just notice the breath. Go into that first meaning of heart, the physical heart. It's a great place to start. We all have one. It tells us that we're alive, so we appreciate it very deeply. So just notice it, check in. And then allow your awareness to deepen or unfold or allow, whatever the word is that comes to mind, your emotional terrain. Now this is something Joan and I notice a great deal, and I'm sure many of you out there do too. And there's a lot running around emotionally for people. And that's just fine. It's so important to notice whatever it is that you notice. So allow this to be part of your new work in being present, is that you just allow yourself to notice how you feel about things. There we go. So there's going to be more than one thing. There might be something that predominates, and all of it's just all right. There we go, everybody. Very good. And then we go into the third meaning of heart, core, essence of all, where you and I are one, where we're just some light, which is a photon, some biophotons, which is a little bit of matter. We have resonances and frequencies and vibrations and information, all falling into patterns. And it's all within the infinite sea of potential, where it is not yet energy, it is just potential. It has not formed into something. So it is the level of where you and I are one, where we're all one. And there is no difference. And this becomes important because today we're going to talk about the 100th monkey principle and the forces that are at play around the world. And how does that happen? It's because this is who we are truly at core. We are all one. And it's us coming into our awareness of it that sets up patterns. So as we allow ourselves to just be back particles and all that space in between the particles, and everything kind of softens, and things might get a little wiggly, and that's great, that's perfect. There's also a space where you don't necessarily have language or words, you just notice things are going on, because it's about the right brain often. And that's a parallel processor. So you'll just notice something's different and you don't have words. And that's perfect because it means you're in that right side of the brain. And the right side of that brain is connected to the heart, to this field, not necessarily the physical heart, to this field of heart. So this is heart-centered awareness, where you have whole brain access. You're just not limited by the limits of the left brain, which is its whole business, is to build structure. So as we just let all this relax and appreciate that things aren't necessarily what you think they are or what you assume them to be, just feel yourself relax. Resources are showing up. Things are moving into our lines of awareness, our ability to focus differently. That's what this age is all about. Focusing differently. Oh, that's a nice place, Joan. What you noticed then?
I am feeling motivated to tell people a bedtime story.
A lullaby?
I want to tell them about the 100th monkey.
Oh, great. Good thing.
So once upon a time, there's a Japanese monkey. It was a Macaca fuscata, and it had been observed in the wild for a period of 30 years. And in 1952, on the island of Koshima, scientists were providing monkeys with sweet potatoes dropped in the sand. And the monkeys liked the taste of the raw sweet potato, but they found the dirt unpleasant. An 18-month-old female named Imo found that she could solve the problem by washing the potatoes in a nearby stream. And she taught this trick to her mother. And her playmates also learned this new way, and they taught their mothers too. It was interesting reverse teaching, the youngest teaching the elders.
Yeah.
And this cultural innovation was gradually picked up by various monkeys before the eyes of the scientists. And between 1952 and 1958, all the young monkeys learned to wash the sandy sweet potatoes and make them more palatable. Only the adults who imitated the children learned this social improvement. Other adults kept eating the dirty sweet potato. Then something startling took place. In the autumn of 1958, a certain number of Koshima monkeys were washing sweet potatoes, and actually the exact number was not known. That is, just suppose that one time the sun rose one morning and there were like 99 on Koshima Island who had learned to wash their sweet potatoes, and then the next morning 100th monkey had learned to wash. So what happened was, instantaneously, the habit of washing sweet potatoes, colonies on other monkeys on other islands in the mainland troop of monkeys, and Takayama began washing their sweet potatoes. And a certain critical number achieved this awareness, and new awareness communicated from mind to mind. So this actually happened. This was a real story. It's not a fable. And Ken Keyes Jr. put it in his book, The 100th Monkey. So this happened in the 1950s, and what we've all been aware of, and we've been putting it upon the, 2012 and all this, that we were going to be hitting a critical mass which would instantaneously create change around the planet. And just like the 100th monkey, like washing sweet potatoes, except we're talking about a cosmic shift. Mm-hmm. And I feel like what happened over the last weekend was evidence of that. It was phenomenal. There were people protesting in Antarctica, people protesting in, former Soviet Union countries. It was a phenomenal experience around the world that was more and bigger than any individual politics. And I believe it was a global shift in the collective awareness that we have come more into form. And that's what's going on.
Yeah. There's so many forces at play in that. And it's this unfolding. And it was interesting. I reacted to the word protest when you said the word protest showing up. And I thought, well, is this a protest or is this just people showing up? Finally, count me for something. Protest isn't necessarily a bad word in that sense. It's
right. It was a peaceful protest.
Yes, which is interesting, right? There wasn't this violence. Now, I live here in Portland, and we had a very powerful women's march. The night before, there were protests, and they became violent. And but that was a different group of people. The women's march, and they called it the Women's March. There wasn't a lot of protests in that. Was so family oriented, and it was, really community. It was men and children and women, and they just, they said somewhere between 70 to 100,000 people. We just wanted you to know that we're paying attention, and I think that's what the notice is that we're paying attention. And it's globally, which is very exciting.
It was kind of, as you're describing that, they had the same problem in Washington, D.C., and it was like the shift from the masculine, which is the not the divine masculine, but the old paradigm masculine of dominance, and which is destructive. and violent. And that was the day before, and the next day the feminine took over.
Well, and that was interesting because one guy said that night, he says, we have the right to be violent. And I went, oh my God. So then they attacked the police. And I'm like, oh, that's helpful, right? It was just so offensive, just the way he said it. And I'm like, oh my God.
Some of those, I believe, were incited. But rather than get caught up in that,
right?
Rather than get caught up in that, if you look at the energy shift,
Mm-hmm.
the energy shift. I mean, because they were also saying, the Women's March, the reason why, the police were, because it was all white women, and I'm reading accounts of, there were people who were doing indigenous and native things that were, that you had oblivious white women walking right through their ceremony.
Right.
And then, it was organized initially by women of color. And, there's, and then there were people who were intersex or non-gender or who identify as female, and they were upset by the amount of vagina references because they didn't have one, but they considered themselves female. So it was interesting that even within all that, there's still the process of body and gender, whereas what it really is the energetic shift. And what is happening as greater consciousness comes into form, there's a de-energizing of identity, which includes, do I identify as, as heterosexual or other sexual? It's a de-energizing of the identity. And it's an increase in collective cooperation. And I keep the word networking, and that isn't but I think I keep wanting to say networking because if you look energetically, it's the intersections of all these different lines.
It's connection. That's what networking is. It's connection.
Well, and if you're looking on the energy, there's grids, and so you're seeing all these multiple layers of grids going on energetically around.
Energetic.
So it's a bigger thing, much bigger than any issue is.
So what if people didn't have to defend to themselves, right? See, because that comes from within, that I have to defend who I am to myself, and then that plays out in the world. And what we saw, is people are at different places with that. But what if there was an acceptance and a cooperation and a connection that says, oh, you're showing up a little differently than me, and that's okay. We can still walk together. We don't have to be violent about that. You can be who you are, and I can be who I am, and we can share in this collective experience we call consciousness. I think that's where we're shifting. I really find myself taking it out of the feminine and out of the masculine and all that, because that feels very old, like you were talking about earlier. And it's, I respect the Bible, but it set in stone a lot of story as much as any other religions. And
what's hilarious about it is that the Bible isn't really set in stone. Maybe you're talking about stone tablets, but it has been edited, it has been interpreted over time, and misinterpreted. So it's all been viewed through slides.
Right. And so it's all about interpretation. Right. And it's interesting how we get attached and what we get attached to. Mostly I think attachment happens because it's easier than to not be attached. I don't have to think. If I get attached to an idea or in a person, and because attachment works with anything, because we're relationship-based creatures. So in that attachment, there's an ease there. And if we don't question, if we don't have an open mind about it, we assume that that's the truth and that's the way it always is and that's the way it'll always be. And I think people are getting really mobilized about that. Those things that you've always taken for granted, you get to look at again. And that's what's coming out of this.
So wait. So I lost you there because I got stuck on just when you were saying about people are getting mobilized, and I in my mind was going, there's like a lack of whatever that opposite is. So
But people did get mobilized, right? They started.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
it brings them together. It's bringing them together on those issues. Got it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Whether it was their SUV or their Peugeot.
Well, and we still have physical bodies, and so physical form is held together through attachment. Otherwise, we'd be these free-floating amoebas or something, or just atoms and molecules just wafting through. So we've still got physical form, but all of that is becoming more liquid. All that's becoming more diffuse because of greater awareness coming in. And the more solid things are disintegrating. Yeah. So the stuff they're protesting against is going away. It has a finite. It's all going to collapse or implode at some point because it doesn't have a structure that is going to hold it anymore.
Right.
And how can we hold the bigger space for the adolescent growth period or the pubescent growth period that's going on right now?
Well, I think this all comes back to how do we reframe this in a way that enriches, right? And so, as whether we're male or female listening, because our listeners, are and others, whoever might be listening, how do we each experience this, and how do we put it in a way that enriches our experience as opposed to being the admonishing voice, about something. So in this state, we take away the judgment, which since we don't even often understand how we are expressing a judgment, if we take away the judgment, we just put warmth and support back in everybody. And just what could soften. That's the thing about the feminine, is the soften. And as we use that power in each of us, that capability to not have to defend, not have to push forward, but the passive quality and that's not passive in a powerless sense, that is passive in a very powerful way of being free to move in any direction. Within each of us, what would happen if we could tap into that more? And it doesn't matter what gender you are or what gender you declare yourself to be. What is that quality in each of us in consciousness? And that's potential. That's the softness. There's no hardness in potential. So forget the language, because that'll set up reactions everywhere and triggers, etc. And just go to the sea of potential, where no thing is yet set in anything. And allow yourself to experience that. Whether it's a thought, whether it's a concept, whether it's an action, put the softness, which just means let it go back to particles. Let it get fuzzy. Let it get dynamic in a whole different way. And do this with whatever is showing up in your life. Because this is the time for it to be very accessible. What you notice, Joan?
I'm noticing we got out of conversation and into some other mode.
I just go where it shows up.
And I'm looking at time and space and minutes ticking by. So it was kind of interesting. It was just an interesting thing to notice. And that, and you're right. Going where the flow is going and noticing what's coming next. And I want to invite people to notice that there is a neutrality to this. I always say that when Janet brings us into heart space in the 5+ minutes that she talks, bringing us into heart space, that it feels like we're wafting down, a river. And I always joke that we should have Mai Tais, and that there is this very effortless space and the sense of non-judgment that you talk about. And if we could be in that space, if you can take this space that she's led us into, if you can take that space out to your daily life, how different would your experience be of all the change that is unfolding? Because right now there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of, intensity, there's a lot of roller coaster ride going on. And when we're in this heart space, you're aware of a greater truth. And I have the sense of being able to observe what's going on in the world from a more detached viewpoint, which doesn't mean that I don't have a desire for more well-being in certain areas, but I can let back, I can sit back and let I can let the drama unfold, not my circus, not my monkeys, and actually be amused at whatever is going to show up next. Get out the popcorn, sit back and watch.
Yeah. And that is consciousness, right? I think what I would like to leave people with is that the drama and the trauma and all that is just story. And it has a place. It is the past, unless you're bringing it into the present and into the future. And in being present, that stops. And it's the space between the thoughts. And once again, it's about saying, yes, that was then, and making sure that when you say that was then, it was then, not now. I'm always bringing clients and groups to the awareness of what is right now, because we're always referring to our story. And in referring, we're in the past with it. We're not in the present. So it's for all of us here to pay attention to what is the story of the past, in the past, and it was real, and it was what you were, and whatever you believe that was all about, and how is that not now? Because if you stay stuck in the past, that's where all the biases, the agendas, the abuse, the trauma, maybe occasional joy, whatever it is active. So bring it to the present and look at that person across from you and feel their truth. Watched something on the news last night, and they were interviewing coal miners, right, who have a tremendous history. And why they vote a certain way or why they didn't vote a certain way. And everybody had sincerity present. And you could not fault any of them for what their choices are. You might have made a different choice, but that's the choice was made. You need to respect. That's what connection is. We want to reframe, we're reframing information and how we exist with each other.
Well, what's so fascinating to me is, what you're saying, people vote the way they vote, and they vote based on the information they have in the present moment. And I grew up a staunch Republican, and I voted straight Republican ticket all the way right through George W. Bush. And my story about what changed, I think I was 35 when he was up for re-election, and I was home with two little kids who had chickenpox, and he had just vetoed the family leave bill. So my story is that, that changed me over, and I became a Democrat from then on. And I just realized how little I pay attention to certain things because there still isn't a family leave bill.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that. So, but I was trying to think, what was I thinking back then, and why was I voting the way I was voting? And I didn't pay a lot of attention to what was going on I thought that the George W. Bush, the senior, is who I'm talking about. I just thought he talked in ways that I understood, and that he reached the common people, and he was my dad's boss. So I was voting for him. And after I did that, I didn't pay attention to who was being selected for cabinets. It didn't make any sense to me. I was just doing what was right, and it was the right thing, and end of discussion. This was right. So there is an advantage to being able to step back and look at the ripple effect of decisions, and also to step back and look at people making choices based on what's in front of them. I've talked to a lot of people who voted in the election, and it seemed to me like they were picking somebody to be the manager of their company rather than somebody running an entire global superpower, or who picked somebody because they felt like America needed to be run as a business and didn't see how businesses treat their employees and how did this person treat his businesses. So it's not fully understanding what politics is, and I think there's actually a lot of people in politics not understanding what politics is. When it really comes down to that, this is about people and how we live and how we interact with each other.
It's the value we put on people. It's the value we put on ourselves. I see a lot of feminine energy that has been I would have to use the word corrupted. So it's adapted. And, and that's not a judgment. It might sound like a judgment, and I don't mean it in that sense. I mean it that there's always different ways things play out, and it's what reality you're in. And the nature of the individual is to survive. And so we do what we do in order to survive. And sometimes that comes at cost. Sometimes that was not a willing position. And I think all of that is coming out. There's many men who are wounded by what they see in the world, and they aren't happy with it. And so I think this is just a renaissance that's happening, and a new revitalization, a new potential being available for all individuals, however you so choose to use it. So and that's going to be based on your biases and what you're comfortable with and how willing you are to take a different position and to know yourself. So
I was just about to Google Dark Ages to Renaissance because I don't remember my history that well. And actually that just is going way, way too intellectual because we don't need to go there. We do need to, however, go to a commercial break. So I want to remind folks that you're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet, and we are going to take a commercial break, but stay tuned because we are talking about the Women's March and consciousness, and we'll be right back.
Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs. Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath, accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet. And we have been talking about, and are continuing to talk about, the Women's March and consciousness.
Do you notice how easy it's feeling, Joan? I don't know what the word is, but there seems to be a relaxation going on. And I appreciate that. I very much appreciate that. So what if we're helping people to reorganize that conversation they didn't know they were having? And so listeners, just pay attention. It's not about doing anything. It's just about allowing. And these questions that you have, that you might be making some hard choices, or what you perceive to be as a hard choice. Okay? So just remember, those are your assumptions and your perceptions at play. In allowing yourself to find new truth and to hear your authentic voice and be part of heart-centered awareness where you can utilize it, things start to soften and they show up differently. So if you just get really present right now, not in your story that something has to be hard and difficult, and go into a place where, well, that feels a little different, and you allow that to be real, it's real. So what if transition and change comes easier? And you'll hear Joan and I say about it being easy. Well, it's easy because we allow it to be easy. If you free up the story attachment, you go into a new state of awareness about being present. It's not what you thought it was. And I think that's the ease we're finding here, Joan.
Yes. Yeah. It's effortless. So
Yeah.
I know when people come to my meetups, I do this game with them where they walk through doors to parallel universes. Mm-hmm. And I don't give them a lot of description on what that's supposed to feel like or be like. And so they start with no expectations or no assumptions. Mm-hmm. And what I find is they go away from that first meetup and their entire lives reorganize. They come back the next week, or they come back, a month later, and their entire life is unfolded differently, and without an awareness of that they did something really monumental, really significant, just in casually walking around the room at the conference room and meeting room at the library. I want to let people know we're sliding right along here in our last 5 minutes, so I thought I'd let people know that that they're able to come to play with Walking Through Parallel Universes in University Place tomorrow night. So I'm doing a Conscious Conversations meetup, which is partial conversations, similar to like what Janet and I do, and then physicalizing using these techniques of consciousness. So that's at University Place in Tacoma, south of Tacoma, actually near Whole Foods. And then we're on Mercer Island this weekend talking about 2017 being the year of realization, what you're going to manifest. And also you can stay connected with us beyond the show by going to consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. You can listen to our podcasts, our previous podcasts, and read Janet's blog and my blog. Find out more about our meetups in Portland and up here in the Seattle, Tacoma area. And you can find out about our sessions and our show on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube. And anything else, Jen?
Well, I can feel that this is, whatever you want to call it, womanhood or feminine, however you choose to frame it. And it's going to seem like a conversation about power, and where it's really just this unfolding awareness of flow of information. And don't make this about power, even though it's going to be me feel like power, and feeling powerful, and feeling expressive, and feeling appreciated, and all those things. So this can have a lot of energy behind it. And just know that, and also know that it's about connecting, it's about compassion, it's about community, and it's about you embracing yourself from a place, from a position that maybe you haven't held before. And that is just so beautiful. And we appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. I wanted to touch base on that effortlessness and ease and like what you were describing. And, you know, when both you and I do energy sessions with people, we do invite them to notice what is different, because that helps validate the change that they've made. And the thing to realize is that the change can be very subtle. So you've stepped into a parallel universe, and the world may not look different at first, but it will feel different, and it will be unfolding differently from this point on. So I just realized that every time you listen to the show and Janet brings you into Heart Space, it is an opportunity to do that, to completely transform your life in a very easy and effortless way.
Well, you know, I had someone here the other day, and I had seen her in August, and
45
she said,
seconds.
Okay. And she said, so much happened, and I couldn't tell you about it. But what happened was she had a bad issue with her boss. Her boss quit the next week. And this woman was freaked because...
I had an exact same thing happen to somebody in a meetup as well.
Yes.
So rather than go into the story of a client on the air, you can just see how effortless it can be. And I just want to remind folks that you've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan.
And I'm Janet. And thank you for joining us.
Stay tuned next week, same time, same channels.
You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And thanks so much for helping to co-create the show, no matter if you're listening live or on demand. You energetically contribute to our collective experience. Joan and Janet love to hear from you and invite you to email your comments and ideas for them to explore each week. Contact them at consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Tune in next week for another great show, and until then, keep enjoying this wonderful adventure we call life.